I got stabbed, slashed, and probably would have lost my life if this was real. Or to find out if karate, well, my karate, is effective against a knife attack. This is Rush. Welcome to the Lionheart Academy channel. Let's begin. In my home country of Singapore, a country which probably has one of the lowest crime rates in the world, was met with 7 violent incidents in the month of March 2022 that involve a knife, a watermelon knife, a sword, a razor blade, a machete, and then later in early April 2002, another gruesome altercation took place in broad daylight involving somebody attacking with a meat cleaver, leaving behind a bloody victim and a mob trying to put down the attacker. Not forgetting this one.
2 men, aged 20 and 21, have been arrested after an attack involving weapons took place yesterday afternoon at Block 175 Boon Lay Drive.
And as a karate instructor, it was just a matter of time until the question popped up amongst my participants. How to defend against a knife, or more accurately in Singlish, this kind of attack, how to defend? Well, I decided to find out. So I handed this to my training partner, not this one, but like a foam variation of a dummy knife, to my training partner and said, "This is a knife, you are a very bad guy, attack me however you like." And of course, he happily did. Before we go on to the video of my practice, I would like to make a disclaimer. Although in the video you will see us having fun, laughing, and performing the simulation in a light-hearted manner, I would like you to understand that knife attack in real life is a horrible incident. In some of the events that I've mentioned before, people have been seriously injured, with even one of them being fatally shot by the police. And even in instances where the victims walked away with little to no injuries, we can't imagine the kind of trauma that the victims walked away after the incident. So in making this video, no disrespect to the incidents that have taken place, what we're simply doing here is simply a technical appreciation of a violent incident. Okay, and here we go with the first out of 3 rounds. And right off the bat, I managed to deflect the incoming weapon hand, gain control of the arm, gain control of the body, and eventually put him on a takedown and stripping off the weapon. The knife throw, totally intentional. And one of the things that I try to apply through my karate practice is to keep effective distance from the opponent, because the idea is that if he can't reach you, he can't do any harm to you. So once again, keeping distance. And as soon as I detect the knife arm coming, I attempt to deflect it away from the body. A quick attack to distract him, break his balance, gain control of the weapon arm, and break down his balance again through a knee kick, all the way through controlling his weapon arm and gradually trying to gain control of his body, eventually having him on a takedown. And as soon as he lands to the ground, I try to slip away the strip off the weapon through means of a joint lock, and this is the point where he lets go. So again, no specific instructions was given to my attacker. In this practice, you can see him start off with the typical attacks of thrusting to the body, and at about this point now, he starts to experiment with slashes to the legs, and eventually you start to see his attack getting a bit more calculated rather than impulsive. Right? And as a karate practitioner, I can't help but to have the itch to use the legs without thinking how practical it is in the first place. And this is a good start by him over here through my mistake. So the same strategy of deflecting the weapon arm and trying to control the arm. But the control was not as good because, as you can see, he could easily switch from one hand to the other and eventually landing a stab with a hand that is totally uncontrolled at all. So, I mean, there is a debate about what is the likelihood that an attacker would switch hands in order to stab you. My personal opinion, I think, is unlikely, but it is definitely plausible because if the opponent is intent on attacking you, and you know, he could be creative in the way he would want to do it. So yeah, let me know about your opinion, how likely it is for an attacker to switch hands in an actual knife attack. So again, him being calculated with his move, I try to trigger a response from him, and I try to dash in, but you know, he wasn't committing to it. All he needed to do was to step back, re-angle, and as soon as I detected that it's a failed attempt, I broke away from the attempt. So again, a knife switch technique by him that eventually landed a nice stab on my body. So again, I emphasize that it's really difficult to deal with a knife attacker if they don't commit to the attack, and which is exactly what's happening over here. I have to continuously trigger him to attack me prematurely. And it's definitely easier if the weapon does not move all over the place like that. So if he starts doing like a series of flourishing, slashing all over the place, you got to really be sharp on catching the weapon. So this is the second round, starting with him running straight into my legs. And in this round, I tried to apply more much simpler techniques, you know, through means of simple, quick attacks. And in this case, by taking a blind spot that limits my exposure to the weapon. Trying for a takedown, which didn't work, and as soon as he switches, I broke away safely. And at this point in time, you start to see him switching to an ice pick attack, where I try to ride on the momentum, and in this case I stripped away the weapon from him. But I don't like the body position that I put myself in, giving my back towards him. It's unlikely that he will choke me in that position because I have his weapon arm under control, but if he had another weapon, he could easily have used it at that point in time. So this is another weapon strip by riding on the ice pick attack, which I hoped to be a takedown, but he maintained his balance. And I very quickly break down his stance through means of a cutting kick, keeping secure the weapon arm all the time. An arm lock over here could have broken the elbow, but of course not. It's practice. We use this as leverage to strip away the weapon. So switching hands with an ice pick, same tactic that I use, take a position, secure the weapon arm, and in this case we managed to get a standing arm lock, stripping the weapon away. And he reverted back to the typical thrust. That was the end of the second round. In the third round, we start to play around a bit more. I start to use outrageous techniques to see what works, what doesn't, even though if it's not practical, but it's a process of discovery, right? So again, using the legs, and you start to see him realizing he can actually slash the legs if the legs come up. So in real life, you know, unless you're really wearing thick clothing like jeans on your as your bottoms that you're confident the knife wouldn't go through, you can go ahead and use the legs. And as soon as he starts dashing in like this, you know, instinct and bad habit kicks in. And he just started running to the back and being a kicker, just threw a kick which landed on him, but I don't think that's going to be really practical as a self-defense tactic. Right, so flourishing all over the place, making me guess when the attack is coming, and when it finally comes, I indeed did get hit. So I tried to kick and punch away the weapon arm, eventually giving up using a barrage of lower sweeps, or as we call it, gedam barai, or lower blocks, which managed to be blocked once, twice, the third time, and getting stabbed on the fourth time before being able to sweep it again for another 2 or 3 times. One thing to note about this simulation is that we experiment with the knife already drawn by the attacker. In self-defense situations, that might not always be the case. He might come to you in a manner of an ambush, only revealing the knife at the last moment where you're not able to effectively run away. We run this simulation as an attack where the attacker have already revealed the knife, is because we wanted to kind of replicate the events that I described to you before that happened in Singapore, in which all of these 7 incidents had the attacker already revealing the knife to a would-be victim. So here's to answer the question, is karate effective for knife defense? And to be honest with you, I don't think so, but it could be. Let's begin with my own background when it comes to defensive tactics against the knife. Despite having over a decade of karate experience myself, when it comes to formal instruction to defend against knives, or for that matter, any weapons, I have a total amount of 0 hours of formal training. Once in a while, I'll hand over a dummy knife to my training partner and ask him to stab and slash at me for the fun of it, but I don't think that counts as formal training, right? The closest thing that I have to formal weapons training is in competitive fencing, which I did for 3 years, and I did that for about the same time when I first started karate. So although I haven't been fencing for a while now, but throughout the whole knife simulation, I could hear my coach screaming at me to keep distance, to parry riposte. If you don't know what that means, go and Google it. But then again, sports fencing is a very linear form of combat sports, while in contrast, the knife simulation that we did was a lot more multi-dimensional. And the reason why I said karate, while it's not ideal if you're looking for formal instruction to defend against the knife, but it could be an ideal one, is because number one, it's a matter of perspective, right? Maybe some of you with formal weapons defense training would beg to differ. I don't think there is running away from the possibility that defending yourself against the knife also means accepting the reality that you are going to be cut in the process. In the same manner where when you do karate, right, you learn to defend against kicks and punches, and in the course of learning how to defend against that, you yourself might get punch and kick accidentally once in a while. And I don't think that's any different when it comes to fighting against a knife. The only difference between karate training and knife defense is that in karate training, you can definitely train yourself to be able to take massive amounts of punches and kicks to the body. But in knife training, I don't think you can develop the tolerance of getting cut. Reason number 2, I think, is simply because in a karate class, we don't train with the knife enough. And as a result of that, we are not used to the nuances when it comes to the dynamics of using a knife. So for instance, we do not know the various trajectories that a knife would take when it comes flying at you. Our conditioned response to an attack will also be different. If in karate we are used to not moving away from the attack and simply taking in a punch or kick, I don't think that response is as practical if dealing with somebody against a knife. Without specific knife training, certain conditioned responses, certain bad habits will always be there, and unless I deliberately or consciously tell myself to not do this and that, it will keep coming out, as what you have seen in my knife simulation. And finally, on the third point is that simply training for self-defense and training for martial arts are two separate things. Self-defense training is geared towards preservation of life, but karate or martial arts training, for that matter, is often geared towards personal development. So some karate classes, for instance, they are geared towards sporting excellence. Some focus on preserving traditions of their schools, and some focus a lot more on, say, fitness or practical applications of the fighting forms. But these things ultimately point towards making you a better person, in a sense of making you healthier, cultivating a sharper mind, helping you develop a kind of fighting spirit or never say die kind of attitude. And all these is helping you shape your character to become a better and more successful person. Self-defense training must definitely also include those elements that is covered in a typical karate or martial arts training, practical combative techniques, having a base level of fitness. But an effective self-defense training, in my opinion, must also address things like legal implications when defending yourself, how to identify and avoid getting into dangerous situations in the first place. And then if you happen to get in a dangerous situation before even you engage with violence, how do you de-escalate a potentially violent situation? How to react when you're being ambushed by an attacker? And this is bearing on the fact that self-defense situations, unlike karate or martial arts training, are non-consensual situations. So how would you deal against that? And if you manage to successfully defend yourself, how do you deal with the aftermath of the altercation? So if you happen to injure the person, how do you deal with possible lawsuits that might be coming your way? How do you deal with any traumatic experiences or injuries if you manage to save your life and walk away from that dangerous situations? So there is a list of things which I think make for an effective self-defense program, which is not necessarily covered in a typical karate class. And having given you all these considerations, again, I reiterate to you, I'm not saying that karate is useless against knife defense. What I'm saying is that karate is useful to defend yourself against a knife, because I think any skill is better than nothing. There are very good concepts and techniques that you can use to successfully defend yourself against a weapon if you happen to encounter it in real life. So by all means, exercise your self-defense if you must. Like what I have hopefully demonstrated to you, concepts of getting away from the opponent, or before that, learning how to keep effective distance from the opponent, and then deflecting away the incoming knife, gaining control of the knife hand wherever you can, breaking balance, relying on simple techniques to break down the opponent defenses. So all those things come from my karate training already. It's just that if at this point you are looking to formally learn how to effectively defend against a knife, I would rather you look for a specialized school that teaches that, rather than to walk up to a karate class and hoping to get the best education there is for karate training. But if you're a karate instructor or you're a karate practitioner who wants to make your karate skills to be more effective against a knife, then I think those considerations that I've listed to you might be useful for you to think about. And in conclusion, is a question right back at you. Have you formally attended any form of knife defense courses, or have knife defense training as part of your formal karate syllabus? And tell me also, how effective was it? Do you manage to actually use it in actual self-defense? Unfortunately, were you able to handle yourself in a free fight situation, even if it's in a form of sparring in class? So let me know all about it. I'll be really interested to know how it went. And if you like to enjoy karate with me through an online course, there is a link for you to explore down below. Just click on it and come and join us. And this has been the Lionheart Academy channel. With this, I hope you can enjoy karate more. Os.